I wanted to do something interesting. And I've always done, I've always had that creative side of me. And so it felt like a good, I've been a sponge going to all these restaurants, and I'm like, I'm not in the restaurant industry, but I've been to enough restaurants, and I've my brain has been kind of absorbing what I've been seeing and how I see managers act and servers act and how the kitchen acts, and so I've sort of absorbed it all, and I use that to sort of get myself into the position of opening the restaurant.
Okay, so it's so great to have you on to kick us off. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us your title? So, how do you like to refer to yourself? And then tell us the origin of the business. How did the restaurant get started?
Yeah, sure. My name is Justin Twohig. I am based out of New York City. I've, for at least for the business sake of things, it's something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to open a restaurant. I was looking for essentially a hobby at the time. And I've been on the side of things of, going to restaurants, fine dining restaurants in the city here, in Europe and, in Asia. And I found myself like sort of critiquing or writing reviews and just sort of like killing time. And I didn't feel like that was a complete good use of my time. I was kind of going to these restaurants and I was just like, oh, I'm going to be a critic. I don't really know much about cooking at all. I'm actually terrible at cooking. So I looked at myself and I went, hey, could I actually make a restaurant and do something from a technology background, right? And So I decided to start looking for small places, and I got a buddy of mine who's in the same industry as I am. Um, I got him really drunk one night, and I said, "Hey, do you want to go in on a business together and do a small crazy restaurant that I'm thinking about?" And luckily, he said yes. We decided to start looking for places to open the concept in, and we landed in the East Village. And from there, the concept has evolved throughout the past 2 years, and it's been something that has been quite eye opening. People will always tell you, hey, don't get into the restaurant business. Not to say that they're not right or they're not wrong or anything, right? There's truth to it in some extent. But I wanted to try something so different and so unorthodox that even if I had to close down within a year, at least I gave it a shot, right? And then I have more respect for restaurants that are out there today, right? And so I said to myself, we'll do it technology focused. I want to have a party vibe, a very fun atmosphere. I want it to be a communal table. Right, we were coming out of COVID at the time when I was thinking about it. So it was like 2022. When I started thinking about it, I said, there's not a lot of like communal experiences in New York City, particularly, and everyone's kind of closed off. You kind of go to a chef's table. You kind of sit on your own. You're with a couple. You're with your individual that you're with. You're a couple, and there's not a lot of like communication. So one of the big things was, can I make a restaurant that is always communal? Right? There's like dinner parties and things that are always hosted throughout the city, but and then guest chef programs and private chefs and things like this that happen around the city. But I said, can that be something that's just always on? It's always there, and it's fast paced. It's quick. It doesn't eat your whole night. One thing that really annoyed me about fine dining or tasting menus in my travels and going to restaurants here in New York was the question mark on how long it was going to take. In some cases, it could take 2 hours, 3 hours, even 4 hours. I've experienced. There are famous restaurants that are known for being 5 hours long, right? And so that's not what I wanted. I didn't want a restaurant that capitalized your entire evening, right? Because we're in New York City. The whole point is to enjoy the city and go out to different restaurants and bars. And the idea was to be fast paced. And, we kind of draw from that idea from, really the Japanese omakase, right? That's very popular in New York City, actually, probably one of the most popular restaurants to open in New York City, or omakases, because they're relatively low to get started. They don't need like a kitchen. You're just cutting up fish and providing out fish to guests. But they're fast paced in most cases. Most cases they max out about 90 minutes. So I wanted that same sort of feel, but in a menu that can constantly change and be fun, right? Plating to be fun, right? We do all sorts of wacky stuff at the restaurant, and we do it because we want to have fun, right? We want it. We don't want it to be serious. We want it to be fun, but we want the food to be serious, right? We want the food itself to be serious, and to be delicious and fun. But we wanted to be able to introduce something, fast paced, fun, and then with the tech background, introduce technology to it, and that's why we have like screens around, and that's why we have sort of this visual aspect of it. Many people consider it immersive, right? An immersive aspect of it, something that has evolved because of the technology. We're not the same restaurant we were 16 months ago. We're not the same restaurant we were 9 months ago, because we're changing things and we're trying new things out and we're doing things. So it's always sort of evolving, which is kind of fun.
Prior to the opening, thinking this would be a good hobby, whatever, like, what was your upbringing, or what caused you to like enjoy food, want to go to these places to dine out? Is it something you've been doing since you were a kid, or?
No, I come from a music background. I was in like a very heavy metal band when I was younger. Kid growing up, just wanted to play music, keyboard and guitar. And I was a late start. I didn't go to college until later in life. And I fell in love with computer science at the time. And I just jived with it, right? I tell people all the time, it's just you don't know whether or not you're going to enjoy coding or not, right, until you start doing it. So you don't know if your mind's going to align us for it. And luckily, mine did, and luckily at the same time, computer science was a was a sought after career. And I joined some big technology companies through my life, and worked, and I still to this day work. I enjoy doing that work. I came to the point where my hobbies, from music, and from doing other startups, I was doing other technology startups as well. Came to the point where I just felt like my weekends, like my Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just started becoming very bland. I just started to go out to dinner, just to kill time. And I noticed, I was like, I'm just sort of doing this just to do it. And, yeah, okay, I can afford it. And I can go to these nice restaurants. But to me, I was like, this is just becoming my personality, sort of like that main character in the menu, right? And I'm like, I don't want this to be my personality. And so how can I do something about it? And going off the deep end here and actually opening a restaurant and doing it and it's crazy. I talk to people all the time, and they don't believe it. They're just like, you didn't do that. Like, that's insane. Like, why would you do that? And so I kind of got into it because boredom, and like I wanted to do something interesting. And I've always had that creative side of me. And so it felt like a good, I've been a sponge going to all these restaurants, and I'm like, I'm not in the restaurant industry, but I've been to enough restaurants, and my brain has been kind of absorbing what I've been seeing and how I see managers act and servers act and how the kitchen acts. And so I've sort of absorbed it all, and I use that to, sort of get myself into the position of opening the restaurant.
That's awesome. Does your business partner cook? Is that like the chef and the mind, or you hired a chef?
We hired a chef, so we hired a chef, and my business partner, Edward DeCosmo, he's actually a big Italian, right? And he actually does sauce all the time, and he has a big family, and so he was the very traditional cooker, I would say, right? Typical pasta with red sauce, and so we hired on an Italian chef, right? And our goal here is to expand it, right? Have different chefs, and have different guest programs, because the name Venhue, for the initial thought process, was a space for culinary artists, not just musical artists, right? Like usually when people say a venue, you think of like a musical venue, right? So Venhue is really, and the hue part is more for colors and pairings, so more of the tasting menu aspect of it. So when you come to the restaurant, there's a lot of color aspect to it. There's a lot of color to the, obviously the interior, but also, we have, like, for instance, we have a course where you select the level of spice that you would want on your dish, and you choose that through a light that's either red, green, or blue, and you select the light color, right? So the table becomes huge, becomes lit up with all these different colors from all the different guests based on their preference of spice level. We've had chefs come and we do a whole story about them, right? The videos are showing a story about them growing up. So it's sort of like a TV show in a sense of this individual, but you're actually experiencing their food. You're actually experiencing them and their music and what they enjoy and why they chose these dishes. So it becomes just more immersive for that individual. So that's really a portion of kind of the idea. There's levels to Venhue, I think, right? We're sort of an onion when it comes to the restaurant. So we have the AI aspect of it. We have the, punk, unpretentiousness part of it. We have this, communal part of it. We have the guest chef part of it. So we sort of have all these different angles that we work with the restaurant.
That's awesome.